Hi, I'm Marcelia Nicholson, Chairwoman of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors. I partner with Young Enterprising Society on a series of monthly workshops to provide you with a better understanding of how government works and to equip you with the tools you need to be a good citizen, participate in government, and as we will talk about today, ensure your constitutional right to vote. Before we get into our first presentation on voting rights, I will share our schedule of content. In the coming months, we will discuss the following topics. In February, we will look at government at a glance. In April, we will look at who represents you and what do they do. In May, we will look into how a bill becomes a law. In July, we will look at how to run for office and more ways to participate. In August, we'll dig into contracting with Milwaukee County. In October, we'll dig into county, city, and state budgets. In November and in December, we'll do a two-part series on public health, safety, and justice in Milwaukee County. Beginning with the next workshop in February, I invite you to participate in these sessions in person here at the Center. I look forward to seeing each of you in person next month. But for today, let's get over to voting rights. Now, let's start with a piece of legislation that is fundamental to the voting rights and protections afforded to all voters in the United States today. That piece of legislation is the Voting Rights Act of 1965. While the United States has a long way to go to ensure equal voting rights for all, the Voting Rights Act outlawed widespread discriminatory practices such as literacy tests you had to pass to vote, and directed the U.S. Attorney General to challenge the use of poll taxes, which was a fee that had to be paid in order to vote in state and local elections. The Voting Rights Act, in the words of the NAACP, remains one of the hardest fought safeguards for Black Americans and other minority groups as it relates to voting. Now, legislative attempts to build on the Voting Rights Act include the John Lewis Rights Advancement Act, or the Freedom to Vote Act, which has been passed by the U.S. House of Representatives, but is still awaiting a vote in the Senate. I love to share a personal story of why voting is important to me. Voting is liberating. My first time voting was to elect our first Black president, Barack Obama, in 2008. As someone who grew up in the 53206 zip code, I never imagined that someone that looked like me could rise to the highest office in the land. And many years later, as a fourth grade teacher in MPS, I was very frustrated by the lack of resources that I had for my classroom and their families. And I remember that vote I casted for Obama. So in 2015, I ran for office. I was able to see my own name on the ballot and cast a vote for myself to serve on the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors and represent the community that I grew up and love and care about. And at Milwaukee County, we oversee very important things like transportation, like buses and airports, the mental and behavioral health services that you depend on, aging and senior services, as well as our parks, museums, courts, and so much more. I now serve as chairwoman of the largest county in the state, where I can represent you all. And at its core, voting is about dividing up resources. Every day, our tax dollars go into the government's pot, and then we rely on elected officials like me to determine where to spend that money. If we don't vote people into office who have our best interests and advocate for initiatives that support our ability to live good lives, then we can't expect our tax dollars to be spent to represent us. So will you show up at the polls and vote someone in who cares about you and our community? Or will you allow someone else who doesn't look like you, who doesn't live near you, to decide who represents us? If you're like me and want to choose your representatives, then I will now share with you the process of voting and the challenges to avoid. All right, so now that you have some background on the history of voting rights in the U.S. and how it can be important for us, let's dig into what you can do to make sure that you have the resources you need to be an informed voter for elections at the federal, state, and local level. A great resource is the My Vote Wisconsin website, maintained by the Wisconsin Election Commission. You can find this website at www.myvote.wi.gov. This website provides information on how to register to vote, what races are on your ballot, where your polling location is, and how to vote absentee and more. Now let's begin with the first step, which is registering to vote. While you're watching this video, I highly encourage you to go to the My Vote Wisconsin website and follow along. Feel free to pause this video as needed. Now, registering to vote. Towards the top of the My Wisconsin website, there are 5 large blue circles with options below them. Click the one that reads Register to Vote. Once there, you will be prompted to type in your first name, your last name, and date of birth to ensure that you are not already registered. Now, continue to follow the prompts on the website until you have successfully registered to vote. Again, I wish we could be in person for me to assist you with this, with any questions you may have. But for today's session, I would recommend that you contact the Wisconsin Election Commission with any issues you may have registering. They can be reached at 608-266-8005.